Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding at Prestigious Pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today, my guest is Neil Twa, a leader in the e-commerce space who spent more than 15 years helping entrepreneurs move beyond the grind and daily hustle into structured, scalable success. As CEO of Voltage Holdings, Neil has launched and grown private label brands into the 8 figures. He's coached over 1,000 entrepreneurs and most recently co-authored #1 new release, Almost Automated Income with FBA. Neil and I today are going to unpack how to build systems that give you more than just profit. They give you freedom over your time, freedom to optimize your health and wellness, and freedom to design a life that you don't need a vacation from. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Neil, why would somebody want to listen to our conversation today?
That's a great question. And I hope I have a decent answer for it. I'm hoping to unpack the understanding of the building to an exit aspect of a business. I know we get the idea we want to build a business or we're in the middle of a business, but we don't always think through what it takes to really build generational time and wealth freedom through the creation and exiting of businesses. And so today, both on the e-com front as well as the business building side, I hope to bring some of that knowledge to people today. The real opportunity is to exit the business.
Very good. Now, Neil, you started your corporate leadership journey at IBM before diving into entrepreneurship. What was your decision to make that leap there?
Yeah, actually, my refining management came from the Sprint time when I was involved at the PCS division when it launched during the mobile internet startup phase of the world in 2000. I got into PCS right when the first mobile phone launched, and in the 5 years that I was there, the systems and information technology grew extremely fast, which led me to kind of the opportunity for the management consulting side, the business development side, and support of all that in the IBM years. I didn't really want to be in the corporate track. Let's just, call it what it was. I didn't want to go to college either, so I failed out of college. Didn't want to be in the corporate world, so I'll fail out of the corporate world as well, because really I just was looking for any opportunity to get out. When the time came, I was just looking for a moment, a clarity moment. It came in 2005 and 6, roughly, when my mentor, who was my uncle, who really taught me the idea of abundance and growth and building a business and working outside of the system, really encouraged me to get out and do something, get a franchise, start a business, do something. So I had a little side hustle business thing that was going on, and I really wanted to see that become a full-time thing, but I hadn't reached that point when he died. And in the process of him dying and then reconciling that over the next year or two, and just realizing that I hadn't done it when he was there to help support me in that process, I now was on my own, and I should have tried to take that initiative. So the growing desire just was burning, let's get this done. And I met a lovely woman. We got married in March of 2007. And that whole catalyst started to push me forward to the idea that it was time to make that change. As it turns out, let's say the universe came into alignment, or maybe God said, hey, this is the moment, pay attention. I would lean on the God side. And the end result was it was time to go. IBM said, we're moving your division to Argentina. We're retiring you early if you want, or you can just go find another job. So I said, okie doke. So by June of 2007, I was out. So as I had prepared to do that thing, the fear could have kicked in and said, oh my gosh, I'm losing my job. What do I do? And panic and, that kind of nonsense. And then did anything possible to claw back to the job, claw back to another job, do something of that nature. But my ship had already sailed. I burned the boats. I was ready to go. And it was time to leave and never go back.
Have you always had that entrepreneur spirit?
I think I do. I don't know if it's somewhere ingrained in some component of my family, even though they weren't, my uncle, but not my direct, uncles from my mom's side or whatever. This was a marriage to my aunt, and he was another family, and I just saw the way they did things slightly differently than mine. I'm not sure if it's ingrained in me DNA or some component of that wore into my life. My uncle's never really had, one uncle had kind of a traditional job. He worked in a manufacturing company. And the other three that I had direct relationships as a kid and into my teens, they they actually had their own businesses, come to think of it. So there must have been something in there, even though we didn't directly talk about it. They were contractors and they worked for independent. They didn't work for corporations. And so now that I actually said that out loud, I think that might have had more influence than I realized on my thought process. I guess I just didn't really put it to the forefront because I didn't talk to them a lot about it. I just literally realized that on this call for
Well,
the first
and
time.
kind of being exposed to that, even not necessarily knowing that you were exposed to that changes your viewpoint on what work looks like as you grow.
It did, because I didn't look like anyone else, including my dad, who'd spent 28 years, until he retired at a manufacturing plant. Hardworking, amazing guy, 83 years old. Still get to see him up here on the hilltop. He just lives on 5 acres. We cut off the hilltop over here, and they built a house, so they're always around. But he was never trained in the corporate world. He dropped out of school to go be in the Air Force. In the Navy. I was going to go to the Air Force, but that didn't work. I'm too tall to fit in the cockpit. So they flunked me out. In my senior year, that's all I wanted to do was go be a fighter pilot. I never went to school beyond high school because I really didn't. I went to college. What I meant to say was I didn't plan to ever go beyond that period. I was going to go be a fighter pilot until
Now,
they bounced me out of the division. Yeah.
in school, from what we hear from lots of entrepreneurs in school,
Sure.
it's hard to fit inside of a box for those people.
It's terrible.
Yeah, thinking outside the box and being able, like, needing to conform to do what the teacher says you have to do the way they say you have to do is always tough for people. Can you share some experiences about that?
Yeah, well, let's say that my freshman year, okay, so in my ended up going to college because I couldn't get into the Air Force, which was terribly, and I'm just one of those guys who's like, if you tell me no, I'm just like, no, you tell me no. And so they're like, well, you could go be a pilot of the helicopters, you could go be a mechanic, you could do these other things, you might fly the transport planes and stuff. And I'm like, I want to be a fighter pilot. Like, well, you don't fit in the cockpit. We can't close the head. You're too tall from your weight. Literally, it won't work. And I'm like, dang it. So I had no plans. I had a 4.0. I had easy grades in high school. High school for me was a breeze. I played music since I was in the 4th grade. So I got a music scholarship and a work study scholarship to go to a college in Iowa, a little liberal arts college, to play music. So I started out in a music degree in the creative side. Loved jazz, music theory, that kind of stuff. But I failed in my first freshman year. I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to deal with the component that they were asking me to deal with in the way that they were structuring the college side of it. And I hadn't been in a position to understand how to do it. And really, I just felt confined, as you said, by it. I felt restricted. And so I didn't know what to do. So I applied back, and they let me back in on a probationary period for my sophomore year. I got better sort of than C's, but then I ended up in trouble because I did something stupid. And got fired from my job there at the university, as well as got pulled into the principal's office and told I would be expelled if I didn't figure it out. So I just didn't fit into that, man. And by my junior year, the computers had changed the world at that point. The internet was coming online. And I'm like, okay, let's switch to computer science. I'm really close to a business degree. I'm 30. I'll be 30 hours shy at the end of this year. And that just wasn't where I wanted to end up. I transferred to another university to kind of finish a computer science degree, and that didn't fit at all. When the guy that was doing the adjunct professorship was like, hey, I'm just here part-time. I actually work at Sprint as a programmer. I'm like, hey, tell me about that. He's like, yeah, I make like $60 an hour. I do this kind of stuff. And for me, I was like, holy crap, that's super interesting. And he's like, yeah, but nothing I'm doing here can, teach you what I'm doing over there. And I said, well, who does that? He says, you just have to get out and get work. There was no training. There was no formal anything. There wasn't academia yet. Hadn't caught up to any of it at all. So there was nothing really to do there. So I just bounced. It wasn't the right place. It didn't fit. And it really wasn't where I wanted to be anyways.
And it seems like being able to learn on the fly or on the job is probably the ideal way to learn almost. I mean, maybe outside of the medical profession, learning on the fly, on the job is probably the right way to learn something, as opposed to sitting in a class and listen to somebody lecture about theory or how potentially it could work, as opposed to getting out and trying it.
100%. Here's how that worked for me, because I went back when I got to IBM in my second year. They said, hey, you're eligible to go get, University of Phoenix credits. You can finish your degree. You're 30 hours shy if you want to go figure it out or whatever. And I only had, a year's worth of coursework I could cram in and get that done. So I started that process. The problem was, at that point, it was in a very successful career. I was running large projects for big corporations. I was flying around the world. I had, a whole different responsibility inside of that organization. to the fiscal responsibilities, the project management, the timelines, the client relationship, handling team and members and management and this kind of stuff. And I remember I was at this 400 level course to start off with, and we were writing a paper and it was about business. And I submitted the paper, and the professor comes back and he's like, this is well written. However, it doesn't talk to what we're actually speaking in the book regarding this topic. And I said, but well, that's my experience, and here's where I'm at in life, and here's what I'm doing right now. And he said, well, if you don't write it to the book, I'm going to have to give you an F. So you need to rewrite the paper. And I'm like, I can't rewrite the paper, because to rewrite the paper is to lie. And I know I'm knowingly going to be lying to you, and I can't do that. And that was the answer I got, was the same. And that's when I bounced. I was like, okay, I can't complete. I cannot continue here. I'm not going to lie my way through the rest of my degree. I wasn't using it anyways. I wasn't even going to be in the degree in which I was using. And at the end, I see so much of that now. And I tell a lot of kids who are willing to listen that are in school, if college is not necessarily a scam for everyone. If you're on a specific track that requires certifications in order to complete that job role and you're super passionate about it, you need that. But for the rest of you, it's worthless. At this point, AI technology and systems are moving so fast to replace all of those other job types, that you need to just get out of there, stop spending money, and get into the learning, figuring it out, and doing it to gain the experience as quickly as possible so you can adapt. If you wait 2 to 4 more years in your current education track, you are going to be so far behind the market, we won't hire you. And there are a lot of companies that wouldn't hire you either.
Well, a lot of people, they get stuck in that mentality. Like they're told from such a young age, okay, you got to go to school, you got to do this, you got to get a degree. But
oh yeah,
society and computers, AI is changing all of what the workforce looks like at such an unbelievable rate that like you said, by the time these people graduate from college, if that job exists, it looks wildly different than what it did when you started. And the opportunity to grow into whatever new jobs are there because of whatever is how the landscape has changed. Yes, right.
Retrained on a degree or business or product type or whatever that they never were trained on anyway. So now they have to service debt in a job that they were never trained to do, that they have to learn how to do anyways to service the debt for the thing they'll never do. Seems like a waste of life and space and money, doesn't it?
Yes. Now, okay, I'm going to shift to entrepreneurship a little bit here.
Oh, Neil, we're on that topic, aren't we?
Well, we are. Many entrepreneurs, they get stuck in that hustle mode, that hustle mindset. Why do you think that type of mindset is so common amongst entrepreneurs?
Because we live in a soundbite culture. And in the soundbite culture, the idea that 30 seconds to success, 3 months to your 7-figure business is the way that things are normally done now. So in our soundbite culture, we tend to think that soundbite reflects the entirety of the reality, and it actually doesn't. So people buy into that hopium, I call it, that little drug deal for the brain that hits that dopamine, and you're thinking, oh, rah, 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 I can do this. And there's actually a psychological thing called the emotional cycle of change. And that's when you get ramped up for the excitement of what you're doing or what you're, going to be doing. And then anything that changes in that path, a different walk during the day, something that happens, you're on a high, you're on a low, the business shifted, there's a problem to solve, you started something and it didn't work, the myriad of things that can go wrong, you start to slip your way down that slope into this valley of despair, as it's referred to. And that valley of despair can be just a never-ending stream of motivational quotes on the internet telling you, rah, 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 look what you can do. If you just get an ice bath and you get up earlier and you hustle a little harder, you can make this happen. Okay? You can make this happen. And therein lies the trick. There's where vanity, right? There's where vanity lies, and the king of all lies loves to play on vanity. And the minute he gets you into a position of thinking that you're the only one that can do it, you can only do it for yourself, then you start to change the idea of abundance into scarcity. And then by proxy, you get up, you hustle, you hit the ice baths, you do all this hard thing, you run 20 miles for the next 4 hours. You do all these things to try to push yourself to improve your environment, right? And I think we forget that is so much about us. It never serves anyone else. It is always self-serving. And every time I've seen people get caught up in that, they burn out the fastest. Those who do not burn out the fastest treat it like a marathon. They don't treat it like a side hustle or a hobby. We don't get up at 4 a.m. Okay, we go to bed by 10 o'clock. We may be up at like 6 or 7, but that's a natural rhythm of circadian cycle that we've come into. We also understand something maybe they don't about our body types and life and style, that there's abundance in the time in which you do things if you have the experience and wisdom to do them correctly. If you do not, you'll spend 6 hours doing something that could take you 2 hours. And this is where a lot of people get to mistake the idea of wisdom over experience, and they want to jump straight to wisdom like a 19-year-old life coach. Okay. The end result is you must have the experience. And if you're afraid to have the experience, here's where I see a lot of other entrepreneurs, inspiring entrepreneurs struggle. If you're afraid to fail in the experience, you will ultimately fail overall. Hear me when I say this. If you are worried about failing during the experience and the walk of doing the business, then you will ultimately fail overall. And it's not a popular sentiment, right? Because everybody's like, well, I don't want to fail. What if this product fails? What if that service fails? What if it, okay, fine. Let it fail. What did you learn from it? Pivot, change, do something. And if you're hearing me say this and you already understand this, but you're not doing it, my wife likes to lovingly remind my 4 daughters as she homeschools them, there is ignorance and there's stupidity. You know where I'm going? Okay. If you're hearing this for the first time, great, good power to you. If you are heard this 15 times already and you're not doing something, then you have moved from ignorance into stupidity. I'm sorry. Okay. But if you are willfully ignorant of the truth, that's one thing. But if you have received the truth and then ignore it, that's something completely different. So what happens with aspiring entrepreneurs? They want to hear those truths, but they forget to accept the action and responsibility of the outcome, positive or negative, and they are not willing to take the effort to figure out which one's which. This room, my man, is full of so many failures, you could stack the ceiling up 5 times, right? I have taken so many more shots than other people. I have to push myself mentally, not just physically, because I walk 4 miles a day. I do things physical. I live on a 65 acre farm now. We acquired some of the land with our family, but there's a lot of things to do physically out here that keep me pretty busy. And I also do other exercise to work through those coping mechanisms and programming my brain for things, like 4 hours on a lawnmower does a lot for you when you're in your nothing box, right? It can, do loading wood and chopping trees and cutting down trees. We do that out here, and that keeps me busy. So there are just a lot of things I think aspiring entrepreneurs miss in the ability to compensate in abundance for what their mind needs, that they overcompensate by pushing themselves physically to a mental state of depression and down into that valley of despair. And I would encourage everybody to remind themselves that exercise of your mind is also an experience of exercising positively or negatively, and you're never going to see the wisdom in it if you don't do that.
So one of the key takeaways I got from that is to shift your mindset from how does this serve me to how am I serving others? And I think that shift in mindset will change the outlook on the way that somebody goes about doing something.
100%. It'll change the way they are willing to accept the outcome if it's negative, and how they can push that forward, feel the fear, and do it anyways, and then move themselves to the opportunity. When I launched my first marketing campaign on mobile ads, before mobile ads were cool, we had to load them in spreadsheets because there was no web interfaces. That's how old I am. And so we would push these marketing campaigns out, right? And we'd say, we're going to spend $500 on this for today, and we want to see how that campaign works. It took me about $60,000 in credit card debts and 299 campaigns until the 300th one actually made a $50 profit in the first day. If I'd given up at any point in that process, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because that led me down a path of understanding the real connectivity to a person and how to serve their needs above mine in the messaging and marketing language. And of course, supporting that by services and products, physical products in our world too. And then understanding how to move out of myself and into them, as hard as that is to do, and try to think and act and feel like they are, so that I could speak to them in such a way. And I'm dense, so it took me a long time to get to that. But if I just given up, I wouldn't have hit that campaign, because then the next one was another $100 a day, and then it turned into $250 a day, and it was $500 a day, and pretty soon we're rolling $1,000 a day in successfully paid media ads. But I would not have got there on this idea that I should have given up at number 59. Why? Because everybody else was telling me to give up. Right? Everybody else was like, this is a failure. You're a failure. And here's the thing, right? I've been bankrupt. Most good entrepreneurs who understand success understand the real failures of financial mistakes. And that's the number one thing I think people fear in any business endeavor. At the end of the day, is any need for guaranteed success or outcomes they don't feel are the most positive, or something that's going to shame them or cause problems in their family, their life, their wife or significant other. And so they do everything necessary, even compromising their time, energy, and attention to do it, as we discussed a minute ago, in order to make those things occur out of, what ends up being desperation, not drive. And there's a big difference between desperation and drive. And when others see that around you, they won't lift you up, right? They will pull you down, right? Misery loves company, and there's such a thing as commiseration. And when people see that, it's like blood in the water, and they'll pull you down. And that becomes very difficult for you to get yourself out of. And I've experienced that, right? Going bankrupt wasn't a fun thing, and it really hurt my mindset, and was a challenge for my family, and was a challenge for that period of time, right? That trial. But I would not have ever gone back and told myself to not experience that trial. Those questions about what would you tell your 18-year-old self? I'd be like, leave it alone, bro. You're going to love how it turns out, right? You're going to love how it turns out, because you don't want to change those experiences. Life is so much more rich that way. It's so much more fulfilling to come through those growth processes. And even that was a huge growth process for me, and how to reformulate my life into what I call my 5 Fs. All right. And the first one was faith. Without faith, I would not have sustained myself through that challenge. Depression and other things may have overtaken me. Loss of friendships, loss of family members and others who simply didn't want to be around us anymore because we became a liability. These are challenges that not everybody expects, understands, or maybe they do to some degree, which is why they try to do anything possible to avoid the pain of these kinds of problems. And I would say embrace them instead, right? Embrace the possibility of very large failure. You can't live, in a total fulfillment unless you do. Okay, everybody wants to live in fulfillment of the best outcome, right? The money, the best outcome, the cars, everything goes successful. They want the best outcome. I say live for the bad too.
Without the bad,
live
you can't appreciate the light.
You're not you're not well enough to adjust to your situation to understand and appreciate how much more sweeter it is.
Yeah.
And how much abundance there actually is. That's the last point, abundance.
Well, I think that failure, so many people are so adverse to failure, but we miss out on the fact that, okay, if we're not failing, then we're not likely reaching far enough, because if we're already gathering something that's already within our grasp. Well, I got this. And you might be moving forward in a very slow, incremental, but you're not really moving. You're not moving outside of your comfort zone, because you're not outside and doing something kind of scary. That's where the failure can come in. And I think that if you can use, so Zig Ziglar says, failure is an event, not a person. Yesterday ended. Today is a new day. So as that failure, as an event, you look at that failure as an event, something that happened to you, not who you are. You don't own it as an identity. You don't wear it as a persona of who you are. If you can look at that failure and say, okay, what about this caused the failure? What are some things I can underline to try differently next time? And then you iterate and you test again. And life is kind of a lot of that iterative testing to see what works and what doesn't work. How can this sort of idea impact this other idea that I have, and where does that growth happen? And how far out on the ledge am I willing to stand, exposed to everybody for the likely failure that's going to happen, for the hope that something new may come from this, or I may learn something because of that failure that I had.
Yeah. And you would open up to things that you maybe didn't consider. So as I went through the corporate career and then got married, one of the things I hadn't considered was homeschooling. And as we went through that process, my wife was an RN, BSN by trade, and was on her way to become a nurse practitioner. And we had high incomes and all this stuff. Well, suddenly we're not without an income, with an income on my side. But she had some income. And so she said, just to start the business, do the thing, we're going to be just fine. That's when I knew I really married the right girl. And so we went through that process. Turns out we get pregnant in October of that year. But by December, she had turns into a high risk pregnancy. So she's on bed rest, and we're monitoring the baby and going to the doctor's offices twice a week and, this kind of stuff. So that really changed things, and she couldn't work anymore. So by our first anniversary, we were not only pregnant, but we were getting poor. We were on the first challenge of our marriage. And to get through that process, one of the things I think people forget is that we will either fall to the systems we put in place, or we will rise to the systems we're willing to overcome. And what we were willing to overcome was a change in life that we had not seen previously as an opportunity, but now recognize it as an opportunity for our family. And she stood up and said, look, I want to raise these children. I don't want to leave this child, in a anything. I want to take care of her. I don't want to send her off to school. I don't want to do any of those things. And I was like, there's a thought, there's a concept I hadn't considered, but I'm all in for it. So let's see what happens. And so the process of that first and then second year, and we know now understanding that's where we wanted to go with our daughter after she was born and got to that point. We changed our life. We made it happen. We inverted things. We sold the house that we had built, that we was going to, live in for a long time. And we had sold some of the cars that, we didn't need. And we moved to a smaller rental property and did what was necessary to expand the opportunity to create that value and expand our cash. God sold our house in 2008, right before 2009. So we got out of our house right before that whole situation. We literally sold it in a week. And things were moving along. And that's when, I knew we were headed in the right direction. We were within the God's will in my mind, and we were doing what was necessary to move that forward. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to take that risk. What are you willing to risk to make this a reward? What are you willing to change to see the, opportunity? Whether it's, real estate or e-commerce or some other method, what are you willing to double down on until you become successful? Right? There is this opportunity to do that, and everyone has it. I just think that a lot of people use their excuses as reasons why they can't do it. Well, Neil, don't understand. I have kids. Well, I got 4 daughters. Neil, you don't understand because I have a mortgage. Well, pay off your mortgage or sell your house or make the change. Well, again, then you find out people really aren't willing to do what it takes to become successful.
All right, Neil, I got a question for you. I can sense the faith, and you talked about faith already. How does your faith intertwined through family and business life for you?
Yeah, it's a very personal thing. So it's not something that I would normally, get on and say, well, do business with me because I'm a Christian. I think there's a vanity and pride in that. So, but I'll just tell my personal experience is that it was tremendously beneficial in my willingness to stay in the fight with my family for the last 18 years. Without that, without a sense of greater purpose in myself, without a set of moral compasses in difficult times or challenges in business or life, being sued by people when it's completely unethical, immoral. They've already stolen, $500,000 from you, and now they want to sue you for more money in order to, these things become irrational. And without a faith, you start to feel very, what's the right way to say it? You start feeling, burdened by the world when it's not yours to carry. And that faith has given me an opportunity to let that reside, let the day be sufficient unto itself. And then the next day I tackle whatever opportunity there is. And when I go to sleep, I'm not thinking about the next day. I'm not thinking about my schedule. I'm not thinking about what happens next. I'm not worried about what's going to happen next. When I had that situation where I was called to a faith relationship with Jesus Christ, that's when I gave it all up. It was no longer my business. My business failed. My effort was not good enough. My attempt at doing that led us into bankruptcy and an 8-month pregnant wife down in a courthouse with 20 other poor souls going in front of the judge to dispel the nothing that we had at that point because it was all gone. I remember coming out of that courthouse with a screenshot of my Arvis bank account with a total of $567 in it. And wondering, okay, now what? But by the grace of God, the judge swiped our debt off and said, you have no more debt. We had made a plan. We paid on it in good faith. We paid what little money we had to honor the agreement. We made a plan with him, and then he looked at the plan, and he looked at everything we had done and what we were planning to do. And he just said, okay, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to wipe out your debt for you. And so we walked out of there with no credit, no money, and no debt. But it was time to start over again, right? And that led to opportunities that have gotten me where I am now. So without that, change or that thing that occurring, it never would have challenged my faith great enough to say I can't do this on my own.
And it's moments like that only strengthen the faith that you already have.
Yeah, it really did. It made me realize one thing in particular. While I had a relationship with God and I understood who he is as the creator of the universe, I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. When I understood what he did for me on the cross, when I accepted that he is the only person whose bones you will not find in the earth, except Elijah, it's in Enoch. But if we go forward and realize that there is a truth to that, there is a greater purpose and value beyond just this life, it changed completely the way I think about this life. A lot of people think about it in short terms. They think about it in retirement years. They think about it in aging up. They think about in what if and what isms, and I don't anymore. I've died to all of that, right? My legacy goes into my children, and my legacy for them is that they come to a faith-believing relationship with Jesus Christ, and after that, and nothing else matters. Man, they can do whatever they want after that.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that it's not how life is serving us, but how are we serving those around us, and what can we do
Correct.
to help those people that are near us?
Biggest thing I think for men in this world, personally, is to serve their families. And I think we've missed that across the boat with a lot of men who don't see themselves as selfishly serving their families. You know, for many, many years, I got last in my family, and that is okay because that's where I put myself. Last after my wife, after my kids, after what we had, after what we do. It is only into the last like 5 to 7 years that I got the truck that I wanted, that I have some of the things that I want now, because we're at a place where no one needs anything, and I can spend some money on myself without it jeopardizing our family. And I waited long enough that there was plenty of cushion and things are set up for my family, and our home office is in place, and these things are all taken care of, that if I want to spend something like that now, it doesn't jeopardize the family whatsoever. So I don't feel so bad doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But up until that point, I understood that, you know, my place was in the protection and provision for my family. And I took that role and still do very seriously, which is why, you know, my girls are homeschooled. We train them as family. We train them in the life and business and finances, and we train them into, you know, things they're doing in the business. And even my 13-year-old has a little eBay business where she runs and flips products for a little side hustle cast. She's learning about numbers and money and marketing. And my 17-year-old is working on brand ad videos for our Amazon accounts and products with our operations team, being paid to create AI-driven product-based videos. So everybody has peace in it somewhere.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But the other two were the faith and family. That's the friends and family. Those are the 2 and 3. We're literally on those topics.
Sure.
But fourth is finances, right?
Okay.
And then the basis by which all of those things are capable, executable, and have the abundance is the freedom. The fifth one is freedom, right? Freedom, not just financially now, but the freedom that I had in my life before the finances ever came. The freedom to do what I needed to do, the freedom to be supported by a spouse who never criticized me when things got rough, never picked on me personally, and we never had arguments about these things. She knew what she needed to do to support the family, and she trusted that I would do whatever's necessary to support the family and protect. And so there was never an argument about where we were going or how we were going to get there. You know, she wouldn't take that anyway. She's a very strong-willed woman. So I appreciate that about her fight and tenacity. We are very different. We're 180 degrees different from each other. There are very similar things that tie us together, faith and otherwise, but in aspects, we're very different people. And they do say opposites attract, so I kind of understand how that works. But that gives us the ability to be one whole person, 2 different brains coming as one. We don't see things the same way all the time. We have to compromise and communicate through challenges at times, as everybody does. But that is the foundational aspect of, you know, the relationship of the finances that lead to the freedom. And with the freedom of finances, you create opportunities, but you can be free without the finances because it starts with your mind. It starts with recognizing that you are a free person. You have rights, you have free speech, you have the ability to do what you need to do, you have choices. You may not feel like it. You may not feel like the finances are near you right now because I've been there, but I know they exist. I've seen them. I know they're out there. I know other people might have access to them. They're just not near me, and they weren't near me for a little bit. And so you might be feeling that way too, or someone listening to this. But the freedom of realization that it's out there and the acceptance of that abundance is going to put you in a position mentally to get closer to it. It's kind of the opposite of what you think you need to do. And because of that, people will recognize and want to help and support you because they see that you're on a path, because you're choosing to do things or see things in a way they can't. Some will support you and some will criticize you. Some will want to hold you back because they're afraid you're going to leave them behind. And that's okay. But freedom is still a choice we all have. We just have to remember to take a, opportunity to accept it and then do something with it.
Yes. Now, okay, Neil, you've worked with over 1,000 entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Everybody's trying to scale. They're trying to get to that next step of their business. What are some common mistakes that you see when they're trying to make it to that next step, when they're trying to scale and get bigger?
They treat their business like a side hustle or a hobby business. And with that, they think they're going to invoke side hustle or hobby money, or they're going to put a side hustle or hobby amount of time into it, or attention related to it, because they're afraid for it to fail. So the reason they don't double down on any of those things what I call the team effort, time, energy, attention, and money, is that they're afraid it's going to fail. And instead of thinking about its failure as a overarching complete failure, instead of, little failure points where you learn experience and you have small wins, they get too caught up in the idea that it has to be tested first before they put any effort into it, or they put any real money into it. And the most successful people in that group that I have mentored are the ones who understood that before they started the process. And when they went in, they treated it like a business from the very beginning, right? I can coach you to understand that. I can work you through the process of executing until you get that. But if you have no willingness or aptitude to accept that from the very beginning, you've sort of set yourself up for failure and you don't even realize it. Okay. Which means every business you start should be treated like a real business, real accounting, real planning, make an LLC, formulate the business, and put down the roadmap for what it is you're going to do, and then go out and give it a fair amount of time, energy, and money. A lot of people do not put in enough money to make their business successful. They've been sold some of the hopium lies that for $1,000 they can become a millionaire. I've never seen that happen. Not overnight. Okay. I said hustled some stuff for $1,000, 15 years ago, and it started some of the process by which I'm at now with my brands, but that was 15 years ago. Right. Things have changed differently now. Competition has changed. The speed at which things move now. The barriers of entry have changed. So you really need to be thinking, okay, if I'm going to start a business, what's a realistic amount for people to consider in year one? It's going to be very different for the kind of business you're after. If you want to buy a franchise, maybe $35K, maybe $2 million, depending upon which franchise you go after. You're going to have to look at the profitability split of that as well. If you're going after real estate, you're going to need to either get a mortgage or secure properties and doors and rental doors if you're going to do Airbnb or other things. If you're going to rent cars and start a little Truro business or something, you're going to need to obviously get those cars purchased or get the credit lines necessary to get those cars and get them out and rented. That's going to take some risk, and it's definitely going to take some focus and money. If you're going to get in the e-commerce business, you're going to need 50 to 100K year one to really go in and compete solid on a brand these days. And to create that opportunity to build a brand that has a longevity, a long time benefit driven aspect to it that is a buildable asset, like real estate and these kinds of things. You build assets to a saleable state. Business should be considered that way, especially in the e-commerce world, that we're building to that 3 to 5 year exit. So everything we're creating creates intrinsic value in the business. And there are plenty of people who want to buy these companies today, both on the HVAC side and physical product world side, as well as the private label and branded side of the world that I live in. There's, millions, if not billions of dollars acquiring those companies right now. And that's a huge upside potential for somebody to look at the time and energy, attention, and money they put into it, because there's a big exit potential.
Okay. So 3 to 5 year exit. So you are building a business inside of this time. You are setting systems in place. You are getting it up off the ground. And then inside of that 3 and 5 year time, you are already looking to sell this, and then what's on the next on the horizon. And because you are doing that, there's a let's say a cycle, a script almost to follow as you are going through this. And I'm sure that is part of the systems that you're putting in place as you're going in that first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, we have multiple brands running right now. Some of them are getting close to exit. We've got 12 brands that are been launched in the last year. About 4 of those are still going to are being processed through and launched right now into the fourth quarter of this year. And so those are businesses that in 5 years, our goal is 5 million in revenues, more than $1 million in EBITDA, and then they become an exitable opportunity. Now, in the process of thinking forward strategically, I had went and raised capital in 2019 through 2021 to become what's called an aggregator, which is a collector of businesses for a roll up of profit and loss to a holding company. That used to be called a SPAC, but we're not doing it that way. And that raise put in about $100 million. But in 2021, when I got to that point and I had the $100 million committed from 2 home offices, and we were ready to go to paper at legal, we ended up putting a pause on it. The market had oversaturated its acquisition to about 40% above asking value for every business that was being acquired. And at that point, we knew there was an issue. If in 2 years, it right-sized, even if you were the best operator with a maximum amount of output and you doubled the profit, when that 30 to 40% hit came, everything you did would just be wiped out. So we paused. And as it turns out, it took a 35 to 40% dip 2 years. And so we were glad to have not done that. But it built relationships and connectivities that led me to a group with a slightly different mission than an aggregator. They're called Patriot Growth Capital. And they are a veteran backed, veteran funded, veteran supported initiative. They've helped 16,000 veterans last year through life events. Families, members, service active and non-active, and it's just an amazing organization set to try to stop the 22 suicides a day that are occurring in the military. And with that, I made very good friends with Jonathan Bates, who had formed and was doing this, and we had a conversation over a period of a year regarding a fund account that would allow us to bring private equity towards the aspect of buying these e-commerce companies and then employing veterans into them as the mission. And even giving veterans an opportunity to acquire those companies away from us later on in 3 to 5 years after they got 10,000 hours of proficiency and had reached a level by which they could manage or run the company. That person could be eligible to acquire it away and have a little war chest of funds along the bottom that would give them an opportunity to acquire it away from us. And that became the mission. And it took us about 700 businesses, and we just closed on our first one. Is about an $8 million acquisition. So now we're in the process of taking over that company as operators and running that company with our partners. And we're looking to get 4 more. So it's going to take a little bit longer to find those. We're increasing the acquisition cost of that. So the end result is, discover, build, grow, optimize, and exit. And then the acquisition even is internal, as those companies we're raising up are companies that my clients are raising up with us. We have what's called a first right of refusal to look at acquiring the business away from them and bringing it into the PGC group.
Very good. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit here again and talk about your book, Almost Automated Income with FBA. For those that don't understand what that means, give me some background of what that would mean, what that looks like, some ideas and topics, but also if you could underline what your ideal takeaway for the reader would be and share that with us.
Yeah, so the book is a strategy guide, not a tactical guide, just to be very clear, about how we build these businesses through our processes, through our playbook, through capitalization, finance, product and brand development, growing the business to an exitable state, how to minimize taxation during that, as well as maximizing output profitability, including the time of sale. And so each of the chapters is actually a podcast that I had with an expert in each of those areas where we discuss together the benefits of each of those segments of the playbook. And there's 15 chapters of that. There are resources and case studies to support each of those from students in our own businesses, talking about what we did regarding that particular topic. So the whole thing really is a strategy guide to understand building a business to an exit. Okay, so the Rager takeaway is to really understand that what we call the platinum principle is probably the greatest business secret of all time, and that's building these businesses to an exit. They create generational wealth and time freedom opportunities. And the system by which we use to start off with is the Amazon system to start that e-commerce brand and incubate it, because it has something called Fulfilled by Amazon, FBA. And what that is in simple terms, it's a giant logistics company of warehouses, plane trains, and automobiles. It's a miracle the dang thing even works. And you know it is products that deliver to your door in 2 hours or less, or 2 days or less. And that rides all of our products on that infrastructure, okay? And with that, I can automate all of the sales channel to fulfillment on that system. So hear me when I say this, I don't sell products to people. I sell data to an AI engine. And the AI engine sells products and manages products delivery to the person. When I understand my role, you understand how much of that system is automated. Okay. And I say almost automated because we're still the marketing and development and product development engine. We go take the data, analyze the data. We green light the data through a process we created using what we call a Cayman Data Intelligence Engine. It's an AI-driven market research product development platform. That's one of the unique ones that's not even public yet. It's something we use internally, but we'll make public later this year. And that intelligence engine has now helped us define all the customer need and intent data behind Amazon's data system called Cosmo, which does all its ranking and marketing inside of the engine. And basically, it's how we train and build this engine to tell us exactly what is in demand, what is highest profitability, where the market share and opportunity is for that product. And then we test, market, and launch that product into the engine, and it tells us how close we are as it sells the product to the customer and then delivers the product. It helps automate the marketing and selling of that product as well as the delivery. So we can create an almost automated income by which we can manage multiples of these businesses at volume. That business I mentioned earlier is going to be $14 million a year by the end of this year. Other businesses run 250 to within tens of millions. So it just depends upon which size. But the automated aspect of this means we watch Blinky Light dashboards. We use our product development platform. We don't touch the products because they're moved through an entire supply chain without us. And then through Shopify, even retail in places like TikTok, Amazon fulfills all those products for us too. So it becomes kind of a spoken hub of opportunity where we can run these businesses from anywhere in the world without touching the product and moving multiple containers.
Wow. Okay. So a couple different questions from that. Did you know? So each chapter of the book is a podcast episode. Did you have that idea in mind as you were recording those episodes, or did they kind of just morph into that?
Yeah. Well, I would love to say I'm that strategic, but I'm actually not. As it turned out, though, every person who asked to be a guest that had a particular topic, I spoke with them because of its relationship to our business. Now, my podcast isn't all about me. It's not a single person. I always have guests on my podcast. I haven't yet published anything that's just a purely me podcast. But every time someone would come in, there's a relative topic to the way they were speaking about the finance or the product or the research or the marketing or et cetera. And when I brought them on as a guest, that just allowed us to expand that conversation. While I could obviously add in my own understanding of it, they could speak about their understanding and tie it into the playbook. As it turns out, that's what we went back and realized we had setting in front of us. And we said, oh my gosh, we can pick out each of these particular episodes that are relevant to our playbook and just align them into the book so people can, read the chapter like a conversation. And the conversation is like listening in on the fly on the wall while we tell you exactly what we're doing.
Well, and the cool part about that is I'm imagining that each of those people that were on the show, they got co-authorship, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then what they do is they want to push that out to the people in their network.
Right.
And so that grows that message even more because they're helping you market and sell the book because they have part ownership of it.
That's what ended up happening. Exactly. So when we did our launch, we had a lot of people to help support it in the growth of the book. And the book has been a great asset. I give it away for those, who want 10 copies on my podcast. Give it away for free when I'm a guest, usually. I think we have one of those here for everybody who's listening too, to get that benefit and turned it into a tool to understand the strategy. It is the missing component of selling in an e-commerce business. There are so many tactical courses and stuff that go out and pay us $2,000 and we'll teach you how to operate on Amazon. What they don't teach you how to do is actually sell and build a business. It's very different, right? I teach people how to build a business to an exit. And then we start with the first sales channel of Amazon to get the engine up and running. And it's a very different strategy, a very different way of doing business than just selling a course or here, let me teach you how to sell on Amazon, where so many people got kind of stuck. And quite honestly, that's where a lot of them got screwed in building companies because they don't understand the fundamentals, the growth, and the opportunity. And I see that many, many, many times when I talk to existing sellers. And they come and then their poor little baby and they're like, this is my baby, save my business. And it's like, well, can you spend the more money necessary to fix it on the marketing and do these things? And many times they can't because they kind of didn't really understand how to run the business, manage the finances, or grow it correctly. And that part really sucks. So we address that in the book and really help them understand if you're going to get into this business, there is a strategy. If you want to be like Daniel, who's a case study in the book, I haven't updated this yet in the book, but he literally just got a letter of intent for his business, been building it for 5 years, got over 15 million a year in sales. He just took a $29 million offer for his business in 5 years. So he really has been the epitome of the process, and someone else besides us does it. That's pretty cool. And that's what I'm hoping for every person. I got 2 more people behind him. We just acquired one of the businesses away from them. The other business we're looking to acquire next year. As they round out their 2025 numbers, it should look really, really well. And then we're having a conversation about acquiring their company.
Okay. Now, Neil, with so much changing in e-commerce and with AI kind of, at the forefront of most of all of this, what excites you the most about the future of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Well, it's the idea, and this is kind of a different idea because I think we're all still stuck with the idea that we need a bunch of employees, we need buildings, we need warehouses, we need infrastructure. We need a different kind of economy of scale than the one that's actually been built. And I think a lot of people get a mind, I don't know, a block or something, I guess, in still thinking that way, because that's actually business from 20, 30 years ago. Business from today, and what AI is just exposing, is that the individual small business operators can run a multi 7, 8, 9-figure company without employees. And pretty soon, probably the first billion-dollar companies will be coming through AI, because the exponential aspect of its growth, its automation and systems, not requiring full-time employees to build companies like that. And the only other place I've ever experienced that was actually when I was in Oklahoma working in the oil and gas industry, and went out to Oklahoma City a couple times to visit people, and ran into a couple of companies who, you walk into this nondescript office that they have because it's legally required in the state that they have an office if they're going to manage a pipeline company. And so they got to this office. It's nothing inside. There's hardly anything on the wall. It's just there so they can have like 1 or 2 people validate that they're there. It's a 7-man company doing over $1 billion a year in pipeline. And they don't, you're like, what? That just blows your brain. Like you just don't often see that. And so you start thinking, what in the world? And now with AI systems and processes, what's so exciting, I think, and also so scary for a lot of people, is that ability to build an entire system, a business in place, and do it out of hired contractors with specific subject matter expertise, who are working in your business for a specific role, but are not employed directly like a W-2 or payroll, and can run a 9 or 10-figure business doing it remotely. Those are the businesses I think are very exciting. That creates opportunity for a lot of people, I hope, who are listening to this, to realize they can do it too. Because these systems are growing so fast. Amazon is like 6,000 units a minute. It sells 6,000 units a minute through that system. It does 9 to 10,000 a minute during peak volumes and holidays. That's just one platform. That's not even TikTok. That's not your own website channel. That's not 51% of the rest of the market. There is so much traffic and opportunity to get product in front of people imperfectly, and figure out how to sell that product, sell that widget, that there is a huge amount of opportunity for the entrepreneur coming in the next 24 months. And I know for a fact that in these platforms, many people dropped off during the tariff timeframe because they couldn't handle or understand the business. They overreacted and played their hand, or they underreacted, and so their businesses fell out of the market, something like 30% of them. But the demand has actually gone up, right? The monthly impressions and billions of impressions have gone up. So that creates huge market share and opportunity I haven't seen since 2013 for people to get products and physical products in front of customers and sell them today across those platforms. That's a huge opportunity, probably in another 12 to 18 months, and then it'll close down again.
If somebody's listening and they feel stuck in the daily hustle, the grind that they're doing, what would be your first step that they could perhaps take towards freedom?
The first step, I would say, is, and this is difficult for some personalities, but because a lot of people are list makers and they want to check a list off, and a lot of times that masks activity with productivity. So they get caught up at the end of the day feeling like they got no reward for today's work. Okay. And it's typically because there wasn't a sales thing maybe that moved forward. They don't feel like they increased revenue or profit to their life. They didn't do today that they feel was a tangible outcome. And I would just say to rest in the day. And if you move the ball forward down the court, you can see that win tomorrow or the next day or even next week or next month. It is to be patient with yourself and to continue to work that process, what I call the 3-foot process. Every 3 feet you can take each day will lead to those wins. What you have to accept is that you can't win something every day unless you consider that you are resting easy at night without stressing about tomorrow a win, because I do. And I think a lot of us who understand that rest easy, sleep well, knowing that we did what we could do today. We made a sufficient dent in the things we could do. We changed what we could do. We did my number one rule in our house: control the controllables. For my girl, is to control what you can control for the day and not worry about the things you cannot. So today, if you could lay down any of those things, those burdens, those fears, those what ifs. What if this doesn't happen? What if it doesn't come tomorrow? What if it doesn't come next month? And all the what ifs. And you can say, I did everything possible today that I could do to advance my business and my life, my family, my personal wealth and wellness forward today. Then go rest easy. Take a good sleep, relax, take a deep breath, go back at it again tomorrow, and then eventually you will see those things come to fruition.
Well, Neil, I want to say thank you. Thank you. Your story shows us that when you shift from hustle to system, that you gain not only financial success, but you have more time and energy to actually live. And I hope that listeners, I hope that you walk away with the reminder that success isn't about your revenue. It's about building businesses that serve your life, not the other way around. And Neil, as we're wrapping up here, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways you would like to leave the listeners with? And if they would like to get in touch with you or find out how to get your book, what would be the best way to do that?
I would just say that for those who might have some reason why they feel like they can't take an opportunity today to do something to empower themselves, build a business, and work towards their future for themselves and their family, is just to remember your opportunity begins at the end of your excuses. So do something imperfectly today, and something perfect will happen along the way. All right, but you have to start. You have to be willing to fail through it, and that's the biggest win you could get today. If you want to check out more about what we're doing, check out the High Voltage Business Builders podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And go over to voltagedm.com. Check out what we're doing. Watch a presentation. The foreword for the book was written by my friend Kevin Harrington, who was the original shark from Shark Tank and As Seen on TV. We do a little presentation over there where you guys can kind of check out how we look at the way we build these companies multi-channel and then see if it's a great fit. You'll chat with me if you have any interest or questions you want to talk about.
Wonderful. And listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share with a friend who's chasing more balance and freedom in their business journey. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss insight from leaders like Neil, who are helping to reshape how entrepreneurs think and shape and grow their business. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and make every day count.